Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Generation Schools Coping with Crisis Forum today. We are so happy you are here. I am Ellen Sarkeesian, Senior Project Manager at Generation Schools, and this is my colleague Brandon Van Fleck, Senior Education Specialist at Generation Schools. We will be your hosts for today's session. To eliminate background noise during today's recording, everyone will remain muted. Today's recording and slides will be emailed to you within 24 hours after the webinar. We encourage everyone to engage in discussion with panelists and attendees in the chat box located in the Zoom toolbar. We invite everyone right now to click on the chat box icon and select all panelists and attendees from the drop-down menu. Once you select this option, please introduce yourselves by typing in your name, role, and school district/organization. If at any point you have a question for one of our speakers today, feel free to use the Q&A feature that's also available in the toolbox bar. We will answer all questions at the end of today's session. Our Coping with Crisis Forum includes a two-part series. On April 28th, we covered part 1, 6th through 12th grade. If you missed this forum or are interested in learning more, you can access the recording on our YouTube channel. The link will be posted in the chat box momentarily. Today, we will cover part 2 of our series, kindergarten through 5th grade. We will have the pleasure of hearing from two incredible speakers, Amanda Novak and Anna Hogberg. Amanda Novak, assistant principal at Westgate Community School, throughout the last 9 years has had the privilege to serve in a variety of school roles, including teacher, athletic, and academic coach, activities director, advisor, and administrator, allowing her to see many sides of school and education. Amanda is also a social worker, and she has a unique love for incorporating social-emotional learning in school systems. Anna Hogberg, senior manager at Generation Schools, has spent her career in education as a rural teacher, administrator, mentor, and coach to new and experienced teachers. She is driven by a passion for educational equity and success for all educators and learners. I'm now going to pass it over to my co-host, Brandon.
Thank you, Ellen. Today's session, we'll talk a lot about the importance of connection. And before we dive into the content, we would like to connect virtually and get a better sense of who's on the call using a couple of quick poll questions. In just a moment, the pop-up box will appear on your computer screen. For those using a mobile device, a green poll in progress icon will appear at the top of your screen. Please click this icon to respond. The poll questions are as follows. What is your role? Do you work in urban, suburban, or rural district? Where are you from? And finally, how's the weather where you are from? Take a couple moments to complete the poll. There we go. We have our results ready. Let's take a look. All right, let's see. Looks like the majority of our roles are mental health specialists, which is good. We're glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And about half of us suburban, 40 rural, 25 urban, 5 other. Looks good. Thank you for representing. And let's see where we are. Oh, wow. We got the west part of the country showing here. Okay, good seeing y'all. Way to represent. Looks like, whoa, lots of sunny weather going on right now. Thank you. Rainy and windy and cloudy, a couple other places. Thank you so much for that. The learning outcomes for today's session are that participants will understand common reactions to crisis, including COVID-19, become aware of potential short and long-term effects, build resilience in yourself and others, and apply coping strategies for both adults and students that can be implemented in response to troubling events. So please keep in mind that if you experience feelings of anxiety during this forum, that's normal and okay. Take deep breaths, be kind to yourself, and remember that this forum will ultimately give you tools to help you, your students, and your families reduce anxiety during these challenging times. While it's understandable that we may think pretending you're not affected by a crisis builds resilience, the research shows that allowing yourself to feel and express your emotions is actually more helpful if we want to build resilience. Everyone has feelings and emotions. They are part of who we are and how we are made. Some feelings are comfortable and others might be uncomfortable. Our feelings can change and we can have more than one feeling at the same time. But learning about our feelings and emotions is the first step in understanding ourselves better. People can feel differently about the same thing, and that's okay too. In the context of coping with the crisis, the key point here is that it's normal and healthy to feel upset when we're going through a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. We would now like to open up the chat box for responses to the following questions. Which of these emojis best represent how are you currently coping with COVID-19? Please add your responses in the chat box and Ellen will read them aloud.
Okay, we have fairly well, feeling a bit lonely. Someone had actually posted an emoji where the hand is in front of their face, tongue out, PTSD coach app, and then also the kind of like embarrassed, surprised looking face, tongue out, what can we do, exhausted, anxious, moods change rapidly, confused, all of the above. Mixed, depends on time of day, straight face mouth. Thank you all so much for your responses. Keep them coming.
Yeah, fantastic. So now the other question is, which emotions best represent how students and families are currently coping with COVID-19? Please add your responses in the chat box and Ellen will read them aloud.
Some are excited, sad, scared, all the above, worried, maybe all the above, confused, another confused, anxious. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Sounds good. Okay, these are all some typical reactions that might take place during a crisis, and everyone reacts differently to stressful situations such as a pandemic like COVID-19 that requires social distancing, quarantine, or isolation. All right, everyone, get comfortable, grab your notepad and lean in. Take it away, Amanda.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate the intro, and thank you guys all for being here today. We're going to dive right into some research and just lots of stuff. I hope you guys are buckled up and ready to go. So what you're seeing here is just about reading emotions, and the most commonly cited study on the relative importance of verbal and nonverbal messages and personal communication is one by Professor Albert Mehrabian of the University of California in Los Angeles. In the 70s, his studies suggested that we overwhelmingly deduce our feelings, attitudes, and beliefs about what somebody says not by our actual words spoken, but by the speaker's body language and tone of voice. Mehrabian concluded that only 7% of any message is conveyed through words. 38% comes through tone of voice or vocal elements, and the remaining 55% is conveyed through nonverbal body language, such as facial expressions, gestures, postures, and so on. 55%, that's a ton. So the bottom line is that it's very difficult to mask what you're really thinking. It leaks through because we're always communicating all the time. Anybody, you all work probably with kids, but anybody with kids or, living with a partner, I think can speak to that, how important that body language is. But the research brings up an interesting question for me related to something that many of us are currently navigating, distance learning. When we're together in person, we have the ability to read body language, and it's something that we're super fluent at. Teachers are Jedis when it comes to reading kids, and they shift their own demeanor and their goals based on what students are communicating through their body language. But some of this language is disrupted over the internet. Sure, we can still see faces and facial expressions over video conferencing for the students that have that available to them, but we're still missing out. How can we continue to check in with students without this critical element of body language? And if you have any thoughts or ideas about how we can continue to express our own emotions and emotional intelligence virtually, or if you have thoughts about how we can check in with kids about their own emotions virtually, please feel free to engage in the chat box. You guys are also professionals in this webinar, and we'd love to see your ideas too, so feel free to add some ideas. And there's another side to this coin. Mirror neurons are neurons in our brain that activate when we see an action being performed. They're considered essential for imitation. In some ways, they allow humans to feel and empathize based on what they see others doing. We can't deny that students learn from us every single day. I have a great affinity for Mr. Rogers, and Fred Rogers captures this idea with his quote, "From the time you were very little, you have had people who have smiled you into smiling, people who have talked you into talking, sung you into singing, loved you into loving." How can we continue to convey emotional intelligence through the virtual world so that our students can continue to integrate that into their own development? How can we support families in incorporating social and emotional practices into their homes as well, so they don't miss out on that social and emotional engagement? Many of you probably know how our brains allow us to relate to others, process emotions, and respond to threats. I think for a lot of you, this image is like, you've seen it a million times. So just to summarize briefly, we have the rational, cognitive, executive state of the brain, also called the prefrontal cortex, and that's the center for logic, language, and reasoning. Fun fact, it's also the youngest part of our brain. It also plays a critical role in regulating emotion. It's a problem-solving part of the brain, and it lights up on PET scans when you're exercising thinking or language, but it dims when you're upset or feel threatened as the survival brain takes over. We know the logical brain doesn't fully develop until around age 22 for girls and 25 for boys. Whether teen, adult, or child, to engage in the logical brain from the region of the survival brain requires that one pass through the emotional brain. So the emotional state of the brain, also called the limbic brain, wraps around the survival brain. This part of the brain is also known as the mammalian brain, the mammal part of the brain, because all mammals possess this part of the brain because they live in groups and they nurture their young. It's another fun fact I'd just like to add in. The limbic system generates positive and negative emotions. Emotions motivate, preparing the brain and body for action. It's also where all the connection happens. If you want the person you're with to engage his or her logical brain, you have to first form a connection with that person. In the absence of that, you're going to receive lots of survival strategy reactions like defending, arguing, or disregarding what you're saying. This is not only the case with individual engagements with people, but it also applies in our teaching environments. And lastly, the survival state of the brain is present even in the simplest of animals. So it's sometimes called the reptilian or primitive brain. This is the oldest part of the brain, and it's already fired up and working when we're first born. The brainstem connects directly to the spinal cord and operates biological functions like breathing and heart functions. It is tasked primarily with ensuring our survival. It can't think, it only reacts. And its primary modes of operation are to fight, flee, freeze, fool, or follow. Connecting is the only way to engage the higher logical brain, the region where transformational thinking occurs. So trauma, and go back one slide for me. Thank you so much. Trauma is a complex and vast topic, and we don't have time to dig into trauma entirely today, but it is important to acknowledge that we're experiencing a unique collective trauma in the form of COVID-19. This collective trauma ranges from stress, discomfort, or feelings of loss to full-blown fear of death or fear for those we love, qualifying as traumatic stress. Many of us have spent time in our survival state during COVID-19, and when we are in fight, flight, or freeze mode, it's impossible to access that relational and cognitive sections of the brain. I feel it's important to remind you right now that everything you're feeling is also okay. Every response that you're having to this collective trauma is okay. Because as educators, we are coping with this collective trauma ourselves and within our own homes at the same time that we're being tasked with the challenge of supporting our students in their collective trauma, their coping, and their emotions as well. If the goal is to encourage safety and connection, we need to find ways to help our students essentially move up to our limbic system and prefrontal lobes. We're going to go into this more later, but offering opportunities to be in the body can be really helpful for this. So finding grounding activities and somatic opportunities, maybe yoga, movement-based activities, dancing, and more things like that. On our most normal days and under ordinary conditions, our rational and emotional brains essentially work together to create an integrated response and memory. But when arousal increases, that balance changes. In emotionally charged situations, the amygdala, which also lives in the limbic system, that emotional system, instructs the brain to record that event in long-term memory. These events are stored in a way that can be quickly accessed by the hippocampus area of the emotional brain for future situations that may appear similar to that stressful event. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma, teaches us that whether we remember a particular event at all and how accurate our memories of it are, largely depends on how personally meaningful it was and how emotional we felt about it at the time. The key factor is the level of arousal. This is why we are more likely to remember intensely painful or intensely gratifying events. Many of us can remember September 11th, 2001 like it was yesterday, but few can remember September 10th. COVID-19 is the type of experience in all of our lives that will likely be stored in our long-term memory. Due to the nature of collective trauma and stress, fear, and other various emotions that we've been feeling, our amygdala is firing up and storing our memories. We're going to speak more to the role of resiliency later, but we know that resiliency and resourcefulness deter the negative impacts of trauma. We've all been resourceful in various ways, even if we haven't yet acknowledged, celebrated, or honored those small and big wins. So there is a story that Dr. van der Kolk shares in The Body Keeps the Score that I love, and I find it to be extremely relevant when thinking about our young people and how they process disasters and crises. Van der Kolk shared about a 5-year-old boy, Noam Saul, who was 1,500 feet away from the first tower at PS 234 on the morning of September 11th. He and his family escaped the wreckage, fleeing through the ash and fire to their home. A few days later, Dr. van der Kolk visited the family, and Noam showed him the drawing he had done on September 12th. The drawing naturally was of the attack on the towers, but he had also drawn a trampoline. And when asked, he told van der Kolk that he drew the trampoline so that next time when people have to jump, they will be safe. This boy was 5. Van der Kolk writes that this particular adaptive response is important to consider because Noam was able to take an active role by running away from the attack, thus becoming an agent in his own rescue. And when he was able to safely process his emotions and even create an alternative scenario, effectively determining how his memories would be stored as well. So how might this knowledge, all of this knowledge, be meaningful when considering our work with kids in schools? How can we be a catalyst for the rational and emotional brain to regain balance? How might we be a force of calm and safety so that our students can, in turn, safely process emotions during this time? And another thing, just the last thing on this slide to consider and to remember is that our brains are plastic and they're able to rewire themselves. So when we focus on positivity, growth, resiliency, the better our brains can rewire themselves to overcome the fear and stress from trauma. We just wanted to take a moment to share a couple of things that we've been doing at Westgate Community School to respond to COVID-19 and the significant transition that seemed to happen overnight. Of course, like most schools in the country and in the world, like many of you guys, we shifted to distance learning in a matter of hours and days. What has really been on my mind is how we have and how we will continue to engage our students socially and emotionally during this time. When we are in the building at Westgate, we offer advocacy daily. We have continued to offer advocacy over Zoom as a place for students and advocates to maintain connection. Our April theme was related to the environment, and our May theme is mental health awareness and general wellness, which has been a really wonderful opportunity to share resources for families during crisis. We've been emailing and publishing a weekly newsletter with specific wellness topics, like feelings and emotions during change and transition, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, and various resources such as the virtual calm down room and others. Along with advocacy, we also offer enrichment activities to engage with students. Those activities have included things like read-alouds, cooking as a community, taking virtual walks together, Kahoot challenges, yoga sessions, and more. We also host a weekly community connection call for Westgate parents, students, and staff to join. And we feature a staff member who can share relevant information and resources, as well as just it being a great opportunity to update our community. We've had our counselor and school psychologist speak to mental health, answer questions, and present newly compiled lists of community resources. And we even had our PE teachers speak to physical wellness and its impact on mental health and more. We are continuing with service in a variety of ways. Our service learning program is fairly developed at Westgate, and we're trying to get creative with how we can continue to serve and stay at home and safer at home stuff. And I will say this is an area in particular, like the service area is where Westgate is really trying to get creative, you know. I think we all are, right? But we do partner with a local senior living center and a neighboring fire department and other institutions like that. And we're trying and hoping to maintain connection with them, maybe by offering encouragement through letters, gratitude, and other things. Looking forward, there are lots of things that we hope to capitalize on for next year. In March, we had mere hours to make decisions, like many of you probably felt. And now we have some time to consider all the possibilities. We definitely want to increase our focus on face-to-face physical engagement, even if it's in the virtual setting in some ways. And I know that people are probably wondering about what Westgate is planning for next year. And the honest answer is that we are still working on it and exploring our options, continuing to take and follow guidance from Tri-County Health, CDE, and Adams 12. Like many folks, we're considering what it might look like to be in distance, in a hybrid model, in person, and anywhere in between. Since March, we've adopted the phrase, embrace the ambiguity. We are still knee-deep in ambiguity, and that's okay. We're leaning in and continuing to take it one step at a time while also maintaining our big picture goals for next year's possibilities. And now I'm going to hand it over to our next presenter, Anna.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for sharing so many of those great ideas that can be implemented in these other schools and programs as well. That's pretty amazing. The good news amid all of this focus on tough times is the fact that humans have a great capacity for resilience. So we'd like to now open the chat box to have you share your definition or your examples of what it means to be resilient. And then we'll have Ellen share out.
Okay, we have sticking with something, perseverance, evolve based on conditions, getting through something difficult, bounce back, focused, to be able to pick yourself up and brush yourself off and keep going. I love that. Fall down, get back up. Yeah, keep them coming, you guys. These are great examples. Interrupting threat response. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing.
Wonderful, thank you. Resiliency, as we define it, is the ability to recover, adapt, and bounce back from adversity, crisis, or trauma. So over the course of our existence, humans have bounced back from all kinds of hard times. So just think about all that you've learned in history class about tough times humans have been through, wars, widespread disease, natural disasters, economic hardships like the Great Depression and more. None of that was easy, and yet we are still here. And so on a personal level, you, your family, and your friends have probably been through and bounced back from hard times as well. And the fact that you are here is definitely a testament to your own resilience. We can all expect to face tough days, It's just important to have conversations with your students during these times to help them manage their emotions and to build their resilience to the current situation. So now that we know what resilience is and why it's important, we are going to turn our attention to the how. And so it's one thing to toss around a word like resilience, and it's another thing to actually know what specifically we can do to help us be more resilient. And in the past slides, Amanda shared so many great ideas and resources that they're doing at their own school. And we just wanted to add in some resources here for you to use in your own programs as well. So on this slide, all of these are taken from Colorado Department of Education. They have a remote learning at home wellness site and resource page. So the first one that they have on here is GoZen. And this is free programs to help manage stress and build resilience in kids. The next is CASTLE, which stands for the Collaborative for Academic, Social, Emotional Learning. And right now, for COVID supports, they are currently offering free resources and guidance on SEL, as well as free weekly webinars. Then Learning is Social, Emotional, Academic. This is a really great blog that you can share with other educators and also with your parents. And it does offer tips on how to support SEL from home. NASP is the National Association of School Psychologists, and they currently have materials for schools and districts about supporting students and families during COVID-19 specifically. And the last is a great resource. This is a mental and behavioral health resource. It's an amazing list of supports that are linked to all sorts of different organizations and programming that are offering additional support during this time. So another great one also from CDE is the Resources for Learning at Home, which provides multiple areas that you can focus on. So each of these can help build resilience within our students as they offer supports for students as they now, of course, do not all have full access to their teachers and their classmates, and they're just trying to navigate right alongside us just through so many of the unknowns. This can give you a starting point and guideline for some of those conversations or some of the supports. And we're looking through the site, you may want to look at the best practices for educators and the best practices for families to give you those guidelines. We've included some more K-5 specific examples for you here as well. So here's a specific strategy to help empower students to be mindful of their actions while they are in an emotional state. So we know that our emotions can sometimes be felt so strongly that we sometimes show them in ways that are not always appropriate. And it's important for us to help our students to understand that all feelings are acceptable, however, not all behaviors are okay. So you can use this coping skills wheel or a similar picture with your students to help them with taking a break and managing their own emotions. A great one to point out on here is to have students focus on taking breaths. Deep breathing through the belly has been proven to be one of the most effective strategies in regulating emotions. You can explain this to a kid that's like blowing up a balloon. So one big breath in and a long, slow exhale. So most important thing to emphasize is that the exhales should be longer than the inhales, and that would help to induce relaxation. That's something easily you could do with your students to provide them with, or they can do at home with their parents. Setting up our students and families with resources to support SEL at home can be our way of being proactive, of providing them with tools and strategies available for our children to help cope and manage their emotions. This is a resource as a checklist of different coping strategies for students to reflect on and think about, and can help build personal coping strengths. So students can build a toolkit of activities to use when they're experiencing big emotions during a challenging time such as these. You can have students put a check mark in the box in front of each activity they enjoy and the activities that make them happy. For younger elementary students, you can do this as a group activity. You can also have students put their favorite choices on a poster to hang up in their room as a tool belt, or be able to refer to these positive outlets when needed. Or you can have students pick one thing they would like to do during a virtual class or even an activity at home. Another great example is the use of a calm down kit. So students and families can create their own, so filled with items or pictures of items that make them feel better. These fun kits hold concrete reminders of tools students can use to help manage strong feelings. And children often love collecting containers and tools and adding decorations, making these personal. And students can get creative, add in mini stuffed animals, coloring sheets with stickers and crayons, pictures of family or pets, index cards with positive self-talk prompts, reminders of other tools that are too big to be placed in the box, or any number of other items or novelty, anything that's important to them. So teachers and parents can also help a student to see how items in their kits can help when students seem sad, lonely, or stressed. Or you may ask a student, do you want to choose something from your calm down kit to help you feel better? The goal is over time, students will learn to quietly choose an item out of their kit to help comfort themselves. And this could be something fairly easy for families, as they can use what they can find at home. You can also provide some support by delivering additional supplies to those who may not have access to as many materials as well. So those were just some resources we wanted to share out and definitely have available for you to share with your families. So I'd like to now hand the slides back over to Amanda.
Thank you, Anna. So if you remember from earlier, I told you I love Mr. Rogers. And so on your screen, you see another quote from Mr. Rogers. He said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.' To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I'm always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world." It is important that as educators, we encourage students to think about being helpers in their own communities, to be part of the hero stories. We need initiative from young people because they are the up and coming generation. What you are seeing here is an awesome book called My Hero Is You. This book was a project developed by the Interagency Standing Committee Reference Group on Mental Health and Psychosocial Support in Emergency Settings. A global survey was distributed across several countries to assess children's mental health and psychosocial needs during the COVID-19 outbreak. A framework of topics to be addressed through the story was developed using the survey results. Feedback from children, parents, and caregivers was then used to review and update the story. Over 1,700 children, parents, caregivers, and teachers from around the world took the time to share how they were coping with the pandemic, resulting in this unique and special project. The book offers a wonderful reminder that we can all be heroes during this time. And I'd like to just, since we have a few moments and we're doing good on time, just read a little excerpt from the project, and I encourage you just to check it out as well. "So many things feel like they've changed," said Sarah. "I get scared about it sometimes." "It can feel scary and confusing when things are changing, Sarah," said Ario. He's the dragon. "When I feel scared, I breathe very slowly. And then I breathe out fire." And Ario blew out a huge fireball. "How do you relax when you feel scared?" Ario asked them. "I like to think about someone who makes me feel safe," said Sarah. "Me too. I think of all the people who help me feel safe, like my grandparents," said Salem. "I miss them. I can't give them a hug because I could give them coronavirus. We usually see them every weekend, but not now because we want to keep them safe." "Well, can you call them?" Sarah asked her friend. "Oh, yes," said Salem. "We call them every day, and I tell them about all the things we're doing at home, and it makes me feel better, and it makes them feel better too." "It's really normal to miss people that we love that we can't see right now," said Ario. "It shows how much we care. Would it make you feel better to meet other heroes?" Let's take a look at some other ways in which we can all be heroes. Earlier, I shared Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's story about a five-year-old gnome Saul. His actions allowed him to be an agent of his own rescue, and often taking action during a disaster can help us and our students feel a sense of control, as well as positive feelings about helping out. I'm going to share just a few examples of ways to get involved and take action during this time. While I'm sharing some examples, please feel free to add other examples that are happening at your school and in your neighborhoods in the chat box. And also, I just want to remind everyone that on some days we may feel like taking action, and other days we may need to just cope with our own feelings, refill our own cups, put on our own oxygen masks. And there's no wrong answer in the face of collective trauma. So just remember to be gentle with yourselves and your students too. So one idea is to send letters or cards to senior living centers, memory care centers, or hospice facilities, since they are not able to have visitors at the time. In the photo to the right, this young man's coin fundraiser brought in about $700, so he decided to start giving back. He dropped off coffee and donuts to the county police, and he gave gift cards to the firefighters and nurses, and he even sent a donation for a large pizza delivery. You can surprise delivery drivers with a gratitude gift by placing a note and a gift of food, water, gift cards, maybe even a roll of toilet paper in a basket by your front door. You can offer to pick up mail or run errands for elderly neighbors and leave shopping bags on their doorstep. You can use the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation form or give your neighbors a call, and that link to the form can be accessed on this slide. It's also important to take care of yourself, so you can stay strong and healthy with the 1-month PE challenge created by Coach K, the PE teacher from Reynolds Elementary in Oceanside, California. That link is also on the slide. And like some of you here, I think Westgate is a K-12. So one of the things that we've done is we've made lawn signs for our seniors and hosted car parades to celebrate them. And I'm sure you guys have seen lawn signs everywhere. I've seen so many lawn signs and just car parades for lots of different reasons. So that's a fun idea too. And I'm looking, I think you guys are sharing some things too. So thank you guys for interacting with that as well. And I'm going to hand it over to Brandon, who's going to talk about the importance of gratitude.
All right, thanks, Amanda. Life has changed completely for all of us during the crisis, and there are a lot of ways that life became much harder. Maybe our families struggled with money, or maybe people we love got sick or even died. Maybe we had a hard time being stuck at home all the time, or tensions were high in our household. Maybe we really missed seeing people who are important to us. Maybe we struggled with boredom or fear or loneliness. There are a lot of ways in which the crisis has become really difficult. That being said, research shows that when we reframe difficult times using the language of gratitude, it can help to heal and even redeem troubling memories. In the chat box, name one specific moment that occurred during the crisis that you were grateful for.
Okay, we have the additional time with my kids, more time with my family, extra time with pets, walks with my pup. Yeah, a lot of family. That's been big. Opportunity to do something positive, supporting students. More family time, and reconnecting with friends across the country via video chat. Yeah, there's been a lot more time for connections and FaceTime and Zoom calls. Home projects. I've done a lot of trivia lately. Seeing people working together and neighbors supporting each other in new ways. Yep, that's been great. A lot of people coming together. Clean out closets. Yeah, doing things around the house, gardening. These are great. Thank you for sharing. Oh, and then this is another one. Stop and smell the roses. I literally stop by every rose bush I come across. It puts a smile on my face. Yeah, a lot of appreciation for that. Great.
Yep, there you go. Sounds great. All right, the key summary points from today's session are that it is normal and healthy to feel upset when we're going through a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. Amidst all of this on tough times is the fact that humans have a great capacity for resilience. Coping strategies such as processing emotions help to build resilience. Encourage students to think about being helpers and heroes within their community. If you have any lingering questions, please add them to the Q&A box now, and we will answer your questions after Ellen shares Generation School's available resources and upcoming offerings.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our speakers, Amanda and Anna, and to my co-host, Brandon. After this webinar, we will send a follow-up email to all attendees that will include a link to download our new Coping with Crisis elementary school unit. This unit includes 5 lessons and a final project. And some of the lesson topics include understanding what resilience is and what it looks like, identifying our feelings, and develop healthy coping outlets. For the final project, students will work together to create a peer support group and classroom toolbox to support and show empathy for their classmates. If you're interested in additional resources and offerings, please type this URL in your web browser or click the link listed on this slide when it is sent in the follow-up email. This Thursday, May 21st from 4 to 4:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we are actually going to be hosting an end of the school year happy half hour to check in with all of our teachers, and everyone is welcome. The meeting goals for this are to make connections during this time of crisis, provide a safe space to express concerns, ideas, and feelings, find opportunity for growth, and seek out our inner strength and resourcefulness. We hope you all can make it. Please click on the yellow box to register when you receive the slides. Generation Schools will also continue to host SEL forums next school year, and all are welcome to join. Please be on the lookout for upcoming dates on our website events tab and also in our monthly newsletters. Okay, so we now have a couple of minutes to respond to questions from our attendees. If you have not done so already, feel free to add questions in the Q&A box. So we'll give you just about a minute or so to type in your questions. And I will start reading some of the ones that we've received out loud to our speakers, Amanda and Anna. So the first one that we have, this is for Amanda, and it's a question about the virtual calm down room. So how did you design a virtual calm down room? And was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I wish that I could say I designed a virtual calm down room. That would be amazing. But actually it's just, it's a resource that we have used, and I was about to find it and share it. And so if you give me a moment after this, I will do that and I can type it in or add the link. But I think in this time, so many folks are emailing resources, and it's, there's been so many things that have become available to schools that might not have been available before. And so it's a virtual calm down room that we found and that came to us through email. So we've used that and just linked it to our families and linked it in our newsletters.
Awesome, thanks Amanda. And actually just another question for you while we have you. Can you talk a little bit more about how you are currently engaging parents at Westgate and how you might continue this engagement throughout the summer?
Sure, I think that's a great question. I've actually heard from some parents how hard it is that we're not just seeing each other after school at pickup and having those interactions, right? It's hard to lose the interactions with our students every day, but it's also hard when parents are really part of our community as well. And so some of the things we've done is, I mentioned earlier, we have the community connection on Friday. And I think that was that's been a really great place for parents to come and just feel like they're part of the community still. We have a pretty good turnout every Friday. They come, they hear from our executive director, they hear from other staff members, they just get to sort of be together. I think at the first one, nobody had their video on, and one of the parents was like, in the words of Elsa in Frozen, show yourself, and it just be together. And so that was really great. And then we're also, administrators are reaching out and making calls to parents pretty much weekly, just calling and reaching out, checking in on everybody. We all have, every professional in our building has office hours weekly. So all the teachers, all the administrators, everybody has office hours that parents can always log into and check in there. We're doing virtual conferences, so we're still checking in with our parents that way. And we also are sending out a survey to parents just to connect with them and see how their experience has been with our distance learning so far. I think that pretty much covers it. And that kind of goes with into the summer, just sort of gauging what they need and what they're going to need in the fall as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amanda. And then there was just a quick logistical question asking about the 2 visuals shown in the PowerPoint slide with the wheel and the checklist That was during the coping strategy section, and that is included in the curriculum that we will share out with folks, and also will be available in the slides. So thank you, Brooke, for asking that. And then another question that came in just for Amanda or Anna. How do you help students who have severe trauma that has been heightened by COVID-19?
Anna, do you have any thoughts, or would you like me to take it away?
I was just thinking, my first thought, as a teacher or principal in this situation, I'd probably be kind of rallying the troops and see what support I had available in-house, and then also looking at some of those other mental health supports that may be able to provide whole family counseling or further supports than what might be able to do at school. And I would think like that constant contact and communication, because a lot of those abrupt changes is not going to be helpful. And I really love what Amanda shared at the beginning too, of figuring out how can the students kind of take control or solve the problem or just take on a piece of it themselves to kind of help with that coping piece. And Amanda, what would you like to add to?
Yeah, I think all of that is great. And I think that, you know, it's always, I like the idea of like rallying the troops, right? We have mental health professionals in the school, and I think a lot of some of us also have, I know that not everybody does, but we have sort of connections to community mental health as well, you know, and I think that just like looking at all the resources for families. I would also add just that knowing that different, you know, trauma lives in the body in different ways. And so, like I said before, I think that often sort of starting with our bodies and starting with like breathing and just really like trying to give resources to that family that to help them have some grounding exercises and things like that they can do at home. A lot of the things that were talked about, I think, you know, might just help create some of that safety. But, you know, you talk about severe trauma, and I think that would probably require some trauma intervention, which would require some other partnership.
That's great. Thank you so much, Amanda and Anna. Another question that we had that just came in was, if you notice that a student is upset or anxious during a virtual class session, what are some strategies that you recommend for how that teacher or adult might respond?
I'll go ahead and start, and then Anna jump in. I think this is a tough question because, you know, like the first slide I spoke to with body language and our communication skills, it's tough. We kind of miss out on that chance to check in one-on-one like we do in the classroom. So I think like my mind is going in two ways, right? There's like how do we check in with a kiddo one-on-one, and how do we also just sort of take pause if we recognize that's happening? How do we take pause and do something universal, you know, for the whole group without having to call attention to that person? But if we know that there's something we could do, like in that wheel that was presented, something coping, breathing, taking a pause, to do something like that with the whole group in that moment, I think that, you know, that's only going to help the group. It's not going to hurt anything, and it might offer a great opportunity to support that one student and everybody else. And then also just thinking about other ways to check in. Some of our teachers have used, you know, the chat box to check in. Some have sent emails following up and things like that. But it's also, it's tricky because it's not totally the same.
That's a great answer. And I was also thinking of, if you were in your regular classroom and you had that, or a student was having other behaviors or other pieces, usually you would have that check-in, or like Amanda just said, it could be a whole group check-in where you do that breathing exercise, you do a fun activity, you do a silly question right away, anything to kind of regroup and reconnect. And it's kind of like this question answer session right now. You might be asking a question that could help a lot of other people. Well, if you're reaching out and doing a calming exercise with one of the students, or to help one of the students, you could be helping all of them. So I don't know, I love that piece, but I definitely would make sure we're paying attention, we're noting it, we're communicating, maybe following up after the virtual lesson also with parents, or setting up a one-on-one with that student. just to Zoom, FaceTime, phone call, whatever it is, just to make sure that you have your attention and your support, because this is new to all of them as well. So I would guess that a lot of these other smaller behaviors or distractions are coming up for everybody. I think it'd be great too if anyone has some other suggestions that they have been doing these past couple months. It'd be great to add in the chat box too to share some ideas.
That's great. Thank you so much, Anna and Amanda. And we have another question from Ruby. Can you share any ideas on how to close out the school year? Feel free, Amanda or Anna, to jump in.
I can just talk from personal experience as a parent, if that's okay on this one. I do have a first grader, and they are meeting tomorrow to kind of close out the school year, where the teacher has sent everyone messages either in the mail or kind of yearbook style that people are able to pick up. But tomorrow morning, all the kids are kind of doing like a Google Class meet, and they're kind of doing a celebration and allowing some time for them to be a little silly and share messages with each other, kind of read a final story and kind of say goodbye. So they have, not necessarily face-to-face, but at least virtually, they can see each other, they can see their teacher and kind of wrap their head around that it is kind of the last day of school. And it's just a celebrating time until next year.
I love that. That's a great idea. Yeah, it's important to say goodbye, and that's something we've heard a lot from our parents too, is how can we have that kind of closure to the year? One of the things that Westgate has always done in the past when we're in person is we have a move up ceremony. Being a K-12, it's really fun to sort of physically allow our students to go to the next grade and move up. And that was one thing that that a lot of people were sort of asking for. So we are doing in our parking lot, we're going to sort of offer parents and parents and students to come and drive by. So basically, we'll have our kinder teachers, our 1-2 teachers, our 3-4 teachers lined up in order, and then our parents can come with their students and drive by and wave and kind of say goodbye. And then we will also be, have an opportunity to hand out our yearbooks and things like that. But I also think that just those smaller scale classroom environments and really having the chance to say goodbye and share some silly things and just be together is really important.
Great, thank you so much. We have another question that came in from Pete. I have been thinking about how to support students and their connections to their peers throughout the summer, especially not knowing what the fall is going to look like. Any thoughts/ideas?
I think regular check-ins would be pretty amazing if you are already doing virtual learning, and maybe it's once a month or every other week for 30 minutes and your class can check in. There are a few that are bringing back pen pals as well. So writing notes and letters to each other's classmates, and teachers organize that and get that ready to go. Or also time like how Amanda suggested, they have open office hours right now. Maybe extending that and kids are able to check in with you, or even doing individual phone calls and check-ins as well.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add to that. I'm sort of interested to see, if anybody else has ideas on that too. I think it's a good question and one that I'm grappling with as well.
Oh, and I just thought another one is my parent view, sorry. We did some silly stuff with first grade where we sent in pictures of different pieces, and we had our first grade teacher kind of put together a little PowerPoint of that and send it out. So if kids couldn't check in at a certain time or for whatever it is, they got to see pictures of all their classmates in silly hair or helping cook or any of those pieces. And that has kind of been a little highlight. So it could be at any time and feature any of your kiddos. There are schools that are making very short, YouTube videos that are going out now too. Just looking at school mascots or walking around the school, or a 2-minute talk from a principal and, maybe a grade level. And it's just these little connections that can be posted or sent out, or just available too. So the kids feel like they're connected and they can still see you and have you in a sense. But then that's a strong connection, I think, just from what I'm seeing personally from my son's teacher in school as well.
And we just had something shared in the chat box too from Ashley, and I think this is great to use in the summer now, and and in the fall. So they do regular check-ins on every virtual meeting so students are comfortable with sharing their feelings and also know there's a space to check in with how they are feeling. We practice coping strategies often, so if a student is upset, we can remind them to pick their favorite coping strategy. I think that's great. And then also have older students love playing Minecraft together. We have a few teachers also join them just to connect in a different way. Yeah, I like that a lot. It may not be a formal way to check in, but kids still feel connected. Great. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate all of your questions. And Amanda and Anna, thank you so much for all of your insight and your responses to these questions. They're really helpful and we appreciate your time. So we're now reaching the conclusion of this forum and encourage all to email our speakers or contact Generation Schools with any remaining questions that you might have. Amanda also shared that she can provide the virtual information on the virtual calm down room, and so we can also share that in our follow-up email afterwards. Thank you again for participating. A couple of quick reminders. Today's slides and recording will be emailed within 24 hours. We're always trying to improve our program, so please complete the feedback survey at the end of this session. It will pop up in your web browser once the meeting has ended, and tell us how we did. We will also include the survey link in the follow-up email. And then last but not least, here is our speaker's contact information. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much again for joining us and have a great day.